All right, so I've lived in State College for 20 years now. I went to high school here. Now I go to Penn State. But this summer I had the first opportunity to live really anywhere other than State College for more than a month. I did a study abroad in France, and I lived with a host family, a French family. I went to school at an international school filled with kids from all over the world that didn't speak my language. And what I noticed was, though we have very different styles of lives, some much more difficult or harder than the American lifestyle, they were all very happy, if not happier, than the kids on my trip. For example, my family had neither a cell phone nor a car, but they just made it work. They didn't contact each other during the day, and they biked to work or walked to work. And the kids at the school, for example, there are a lot of Brazilians, and they came from a very poor background with a lot of corruption in their country. But throughout all, they stayed overwhelmingly positive, and it was very eye-opening to see that, despite these different lifestyles, ones that I would consider harder or maybe more challenging than the American style of life, people persevere and stay optimistic through it all.
So the first culture shock that I really had was when I started high school, because my high school was a bit of an anomaly in that it was a math science school with full of academically driven kids, where social capital was more based on what your GPA was or what after school activities you were involved in rather than which parties you went to. And it was so much to the point that kids would even get teased about having lower GPAs, as bad as that sounds. And this whole lifestyle, I guess this whole way of schooling, okay, was very pervasive and it rubbed off on me, and I definitely assimilated into it, which made me in turn, I guess, more academically driven, much more so than I was before, and at times uber competitive.
Yeah, no, mine was exactly the opposite of that. In high school, I definitely didn't care as much about my grades or how well I did in things based on my own motivation. So my parents sent me to SAT boot camp. It was a Korean-based thing, and it was completely different than anything I was ever used to. The kids there were so driven by themselves, but not only to do well, but to prove themselves almost, and their intelligence almost showed how like good they were at life. And that was completely different than my high school or anything I was used to. And it was almost like they wanted to be more naturally intelligent, and we were more proud, and Americans were more proud of studying really hard and doing well on something. And it almost seemed like they wanted to act like they knew how to do things without studying. So it was just completely different overall.
Regional and religious differences affect worldwide interaction in a variety of ways, both positive and negative. We can first look at the negative through three major conflicts that are going on in the world that all stem uniquely from either religious or regional differences. First, in Ukraine, Russia has just invaded Ukraine, of course, in large part due to Russian-backed separatists within the country of Ukraine. So that's a good example of regional cultural differences that are leading to negative interactions. Secondly, the ISIS situation in the Middle East right now, in which Sunni and Shia groups, which both stem from Islam, just different sects of it, are fighting simply because they disagree on how they interpret the Quran, and it's caused many casualties. And of course, Israel and Palestine, Jews versus Islam. Muslims are fighting for a small portion of land, in large part due to their religious differences.
On the positive side of things, cultural differences often lead to great collaboration, such as in the recent discovery of the Higgs boson, which was led by a team of researchers throughout, coming from all over the world. And this variety of different viewpoints and approaches to science was essential in making this landmark discovery. Additionally, the combination of Eastern and Western medicine often complement each other, such as in a case I recently heard about, in which a woman was suffering from a rare, hard-to-treat derivation of mono, and a combination of Chinese and Western practices help relieve her of her pain.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, personally, I think Americans view the world differently than a lot of other countries. For example, if you go to Europe, you'll notice that there's a lot of reliance on public transportation, and it's more of a community-based thing. Whereas you come to America, and it's more individual, and you're kind of out for yourself. For example, everyone would have cars, and you're kind of not in a good position if you don't.